Hi everybody, welcome back to the Claremont Classic Garage. Today we're going to carry on working on our 1948 Ford 8N. Although I have to bring you up to speed on a few things that happened off camera. Last night I cut it a little close on my battery life. Anyway, what we started doing now is we've got the transmission hung on the thing. And we're going to proceed now getting the cross shafts in it so we can get the brakes all finished. But before that, we've got to get our Sherman overdrive transmission spruced up and installed in there. Here's our Sherman transmission. What we're going to do is follow the manual and take it all apart, and we'll clean everything and inspect it all. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. This thing worked pretty well. And then we'll put it back together. Comes apart pretty easily. First we'll take the output shaft apart. Whoops. Got to take this circlip off, and then these two gears come off. Like so. Then we can lift this off our output shaft. Now onto the bulk of it. First thing we're going to do is pull this cotter pin and get the shifter arm out. Now we can take these 4 bolts and get the input retainer out. There we go. Socket will probably spin it out now. There we go. Now, if the gasket's stuck, we'll just give her a little tap. There we are. There's our input. Thing sure smells like an old transmission, I'll tell you that. I just used a hammer and a drift to knock the cluster gear shaft out. And now the cluster gear can come out. There we are. Just had to fish it around the shift fork. So, the shift fork I'm going to leave in. There's no reason to take that out. I'm going to go ahead now and clean all these parts. Everything's had a trip through the solvent tank, so we'll just let it all air dry, and then we'll check everything over, and then we can put it back together. Been up to my usual hijinks again. Made some gaskets for the Sherman out of cereal boxes. Now we can go ahead and put this baby back together. First thing in is the cluster gear. There's a thrust washer at each end. The thrust washer for the back of it is already in there. It goes in with the big end up like this. Yes, I should have taken the shift fork out. But I didn't. Alright, once that's in, we can put our other thrust bearing in. Not sure which way it goes, but I'm putting it that way. Alright, now we can drop our shaft in. Just like so. It's almost through. It's getting caught on the... There! It was getting caught on the thrust washer at the other end. You just got it. It's a little tricky to get all this stuff lined up. I had it in there once, damn it. Now we've installed the shift collar into the fork. It goes with the long, it's got a long side and a short side, long side down or toward the front. Now we're going to install the input shaft. And it's got to go down and sit on that, the snap ring on that bearing. There we go. Now we can install our homemade gasket. And what we have to do now is put a new oil seal in here. It's the same as the input oil seal on an N transmission. So I always have those in stock. Oh, there we go. Look at that. Out she comes. Here's our new seal, and apparently it's a 1 7/16 socket we need to knock her in. There we are. Home sweet home. Good. Now we can put this thing on. Put a little extra grease around there. There we go. Okay. Bolt her down. I'll remember how much fun we had with that one before. There we go. Yep. Perfect. Now that we've got the input shaft back in, we move the shift fork back so we get the collar engaged on the dentils on the input shaft. Now we're going to install our shifter shaft. That slides through there. And then the cotter pin, here it is, goes through and holds it all together. Now we're going to install the output side of it. Start with a little grease in here. Give our bearing a fighting chance. Now, what you'll notice is this thing here. This is called the oil slinger. So how this thing works, the Sherman transmission has no source to get oil from. So what it does, this part of it is actually inside the transmission, and as it spins, it grabs oil and forces it up through these two passages into the Sherman. And then it's got, this one is the, which one is the top? It'll overflow. It won't let it overfill, but that's how this thing gets its oil. When you first put it in, you have to initially charge it with a quart so that it lives long enough to get full. And if you let the oil level in the tractor run down, it could adversely affect this thing. Now this guy goes on. This is the overdrive gear. And this, there we go. Ta-da! Then, our snap ring. Where'd my snap ring pliers go? I probably don't even need them. So you can see what happens is when you want to shift it into overdrive, the shift collar comes and locks that to the shaft, and now she's in overdrive. Now this is the point where we would hope that the last guy that did this had it shimmed and everything properly, because we ain't got no shims. So now we're going to go ahead and install this in the case, and hopefully everything will work and we'll have free play. Yeah. Now this is the fun part. Getting this in here without everything falling all over the darn place. But hey, we'll figure it out. There we go. Engaged. There, I got one bolt started. Perfect. Get the torque wrench on these. We'll torque them up to 35. And make sure everything still turns. Yep, perfect, beautiful. Oh, yeah. So we have to pre-fill this somewhat with oil to give the slinger a chance to get some pulled up into there. This stuff is not easy. So we've got a good load of oil in there already. Now we can go and put the transmission on the tractor. Okay, how do you get this thing in there? Alright, you got her in there. We've got a grommet for our shifter handle. Okay, let's get our handle on. Looks to me like it goes on. Oh, yeah, right there. Perfect. And there she goes. Yep, shift. So that's just tractor. That's neutral. And that's overdrive. So I'll leave it in neutral for now. Here's a drain plug for the transmission. It's nice. It's got a magnet in it. And I usually put a new gasket on these, but this one's got a nice copper one. So we're going to leave that one. Now we're going to put the clutch linkage together. So we start by pushing the shaft in. And then we have to get the release fork in position, and the shaft will go through it. Then we pin it to the shaft, and it all should go together. Now I've got to get this pin up through the bottom. And it's a little tight. Might have to jiggle her around some, but we'll get it. I wasn't really fond of that funny long clevis pin, so I put a bolt and a locking nut through it. That'll be just fine. I'll put the clevis pin in the linkage, but I've left it loose until we get the engine on and get the clutch adjusted properly. Then I'll put the cotter pin in it and let it be in there for keeps. Now we're going to install the throwout bearing and the return springs. Something I learned with these old things. If you got an old, back from the day, made in the USA throwout bearing that works, stick with it. You won't always like the alternative. So we're going to use this good old one. It still works just fine. It's quiet and smooth. And as tempting as it seems to not let this thing run dry and put oil and grease and stuff all over this, don't do it. All that does is attract dust and crap, and it'll actually make the clutch stick. I'm not against putting on like a dry kind of lubricant, like some some WD-40. Nothing wrong with that. We hook our return springs onto the front of the Sherman, and everything should work properly. Perfect. Now it's time to install the shift cover or the top plate, whatever you want to call it, in the transmission. Always be mindful when you're taking these off of this spring here. It's the detent ball for the shift fork. We don't want to lose that because they go flying. I've got two transmission covers here. They're both early style correct ones because they've got the cast shift knob like a 2N. Later ones had a big screw-on plastic knob. This one has had some monkey business done to it, so we won't be using it. We'll be using this one. But to use this one, we've got to get the starter button put back in it, and it looks like it might need a pin. To get the shifter handle out so we can change the shift pin, we've got to get this little clip. It's kind of like a valve spring on the engine. You just kind of pry it out. It's just about out. Little horseshoe clip. There we go. Oh, come on, you turkey. There we go. Now our shifter handle can come out. Theoretically. There we go. Got to turn it 90 degrees. So now, our quarry is this pin. So we've got a new one. This will tighten up the shifting. If only I can remember which way it's driven in from. Any guesses? It's either driven in that way or driven in that way. We're just going to start banging on it and see what happens. Well, first we'll go this way. Huh! Lucky us! Even without the spline, it's tight. So I'll get our new one started in the right way so I don't get confused. Where's the old one? Yeah, it lived a good life. Now it can get recycled. I probably mushroomed it all to hell. Probably should have done this in the press. Oh well. Let's see if it... Mushrooming it all to hell will probably actually make it fit better in the worn out. Oh yeah, beautiful. Maybe mushrooming it's not such a bad idea. Got our clip. Now this should be fun. Getting it out was one thing. Getting it back in will probably be completely another. So we just got our clip back in. Just had to pull the spring back with a screwdriver and get it started and then tap it home the rest of the way with our little persuader. Now we can get the starter switch installed. It's time to put the switch in, and I had to do some thinking about this. I had my choice of an old school one from Detroit or a brand new one from the land of almost fits. So I've decided to go with the original one, and if it doesn't work out, we can change it later. So this works like this. This works in conjunction with our neutral device. Here's our lock plate. And our nut. Now we'll get this snugged up. And now you can see how it works. The tractor has to be in neutral for the starter button to be able to be depressed. You have it in gear, it won't work. Safety, safety. All right, now I just have to flip up one of the locking tabs on this. Not that one. That one. Get our locking tab flipped up here. There we go. Now it'll stay put. Now we can clean up the bottom of this. It was all cleaned up at one time. Been sitting around too long. Okay, and we've got a new gasket for it. The little springy thing goes through there. And that drops right down in there, in between all the shift rails. And we are golden. I'll put a couple of bolts in it and make sure I can shift it through the gears. Let's see if it's okay. It's got neutral. There's reverse. Second, fourth, first, third. Beautiful. It'll be a lot easier once it's got lube in it. But I just don't have any to put in it right now. I miscalculated. Anyway, that's good. I've managed to procure myself a bucket of gear lube so we could fill up our transmission and axle. Now, the jury is out on this stuff. This is GL5. These tractors, we know the recommended fill is GL1. And some people will say you can get away with GL4. Here's the difference. GL5 apparently is hard on yellow metal parts. That would be brass ring synchronizers, thrust bearings, thrust washers, and things of that nature. The only real brass in the bellies of these things is in the hydraulic pump. Now, here's what my research has uncovered. You can do your own research and come to your own conclusion. What you'll read a lot on the internet and stuff is that there's some kind of chemical corrosive thing that eats the yellow metal. That, I believe, is not true. I read a much different report. Mostly what guys will say they have problems with is synchros. You don't hear guys saying, geez, the GL5 wiped out the synchros and ate through the brass plug in the bottom. No, it doesn't hurt the brass plug in the bottom. It just wrecks the synchros. Here's the difference. In the old school gear oils, they had lead suspended in them, just like the gasoline. And that was the sacrificial layer that would bond itself to the gears, and that's what you got your EP, extreme pressure rating, from. Well, lead is bad, so they took it out. Now they use some kind of sulfur additive in it. So what happens? GL5, which replaced GL4, which replaced GL3, GL2, GL1, this stuff has so much of it in it, and it sticks so well that when it gets sheared off your synchros, every time it takes a tiny bit of brass with it. That's how good it sticks to it. So over time, it eats away at the synchros till they finally bottom out rather than fit together cone to cone and they stop working. So, given how long it would take for any appreciable wear to happen in this thing, I'm willing to take the chance and go with this stuff. If it blows up tomorrow, I'll eat crow. But I do not want to put that. Basically, what you have to put in them now is hydrostatic oil, or TDH. And that stuff, man, it makes these things, these old rattly gear transmissions, as loud as hell. And they leak from everywhere because the stuff is so thin. So I'm sticking with this. And if it doesn't work out, we'll try something else. In it goes. Now it takes a while to get this stuff in because we fill it in the transmission, but you'll notice the dipstick is in the diff. So it's got to kind of find its way back through whatever little nooks and crannies it can. It has a dipstick. A lot of old timers will tell you, forget the dipstick, just pull this lower plug bolt out and fill it up till it runs out of there. Seeing as how this one has a Sherman transmission in it, and we rely on that little, I showed you that little spiral slinger in here to fill the Sherman, we're going to go with this and fill it up to the full mark on the stick. I'll put the whole jug in. And it still reads a tad low, but we'll see how that works out. Next time I go out, I'll grab another jug of it, and we'll top it up. I found another, I don't know, 1/2 or 3/4 of a liter of the stuff in a little jug under my bench. So I put that in, and that's got it well up a little closer to the full mark. So that's pretty good for now. I'll have to get some more, but for all intent and purpose, it's full. I could start it up and drive it around, and it'd work just fine. Anyway, I guess that's it for the transmission portion of the program. We're going to move on now and start working on the engine. So I'll see you over there. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, and so long for now.